Welcome back to the Velvet Night and the timeless magic of the Arabian desert. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders relax, and prepare to be gently carried away by the deepest stories ever told. Tonight, we begin a brand new epic from the heart of the complete 1001 Nights. This is a tale of destiny, love, and impossible quests. The story of Prince Ahmed and the Fairy Peri-Banu. In the opulent courts of India, an aging sultan has presented his three sons with a challenge. Not merely a quest for a bride, but a perilous competition for the royal throne itself. Two princes will seek power and wisdom, but the youngest, Prince Ahmed, will seek something much rarer, perfect, supernatural beauty, a search that will lead him far beyond the mortal world. Join us as we follow the path of the youngest prince, whose pure heart guides him toward magical lands, incredible flying objects, and a love that defies all boundaries. Settle deep into your comfort now. Our long, unbroken narrative is designed to be your perfect guide to a restful sleep. Close your eyes, let the soft cadence of the story wash over you, and let us begin the journey. The Sultan of India, whose wisdom was as vast as his sprawling empire, ruled over his kingdom with justice and tranquility. He had three sons, all born to him in his older age: Prince Houssain, Prince Ali, and the youngest, Prince Ahmed. The Sultan, realizing that his years were advancing, wished to settle the future of his realm. He gathered his three beloved sons to his court. "My dear children," the Sultan said, his voice carrying the weight of his long reign, "I have decided that one of you must succeed me on the throne. However, the one who shall inherit my crown must be married. Therefore, I command you all to seek out wives." The three princes listened to their father's command with respectful attention. However, there was an unspoken understanding among the noble sons that the matter of choosing a wife was not merely about beauty, but about gaining favor with the Sultan and strengthening their claim to the throne. The eldest, Prince Houssain, was a man known for his extreme sense of honor and his pride. He was determined to find a woman whose noble lineage and wealth could rival the splendor of the Sultan's court. The second, Prince Ali, was known for his sharp mind and his adventurous spirit. He sought a wife whose wisdom and education would match his own, believing that a clever queen was the greatest asset to any kingdom. The youngest, Prince Ahmed, was considered the kindest and most modest of the three. He did not seek lineage or wealth, nor did he solely seek intellect. He sought only one thing: true, perfect beauty, believing that such perfection must be a reflection of a pure soul. He had heard whispers and legends of women whose beauty was supernatural, surpassing any mortal creation, and it was such a vision that commanded his heart. The three brothers discussed their quest for many hours, knowing that competition was now inevitable. "I propose," said Prince Houssain, his voice firm, "that we should not search together. To ensure fairness, let us travel separately. We shall meet again in exactly 1 year from this day, right here in the court. The one who presents the most beautiful or most worthy bride shall receive the crown." The Sultan agreed to this condition, finding the idea of a test to be wise and fitting. The three princes were given ample funds and permission to travel freely throughout the world, searching for the perfect partners. They left the capital city together, traveling the same road for several days. But when the road branched into 3 different directions, the brothers embraced, wished each other success, and separated. Prince Houssain turned his path to the north, towards the powerful empires and rich cities of Tartary and China. Prince Ali chose the west, heading toward the majestic kingdoms of Persia and the ancient cities of the Mediterranean coast. Prince Ahmed, however, chose the seemingly least promising route, the east, heading toward the unexplored mountains and vast, empty deserts. His heart was not guided by maps or political advantage, but by the vague romantic whispers of legendary beauty that lay hidden in the oldest corners of the world. His path was solitary and long. He traveled for many weeks, speaking to merchants, hermits, and wandering scholars, always asking the same question: where dwells the most beautiful woman in all the world, whose perfection might shame the moon itself? Most people laughed at his question, but Ahmed pressed on, guided only by his pure desire for the impossible. He crossed barren lands and deep jungles until he came to the edge of an immense, dark forest, untouched by civilization. It was there, near a river of deep sapphire blue, that he encountered a very old dervish, a man who seemed to carry the secrets of the world in his ancient eyes. The old dervish sat quietly beside the sapphire river, his eyes focused on the flowing water, which seemed to reflect not the sky, but distant, impossible places. Ahmed approached the holy man with deep respect. He bowed low and offered the dervish a simple meal and fresh water. The dervish accepted the gifts with a gentle smile that warmed the air around them. "Man of noble heart," the dervish said, his voice soft like the rustling of ancient parchment, "your spirit carries a burden of great longing. You seek not gold or power, but a vision of perfection that you believe exists somewhere in this world. Am I correct?" Ahmed was astonished that the dervish knew his mission without being told. "Indeed, holy sir," Ahmed replied. "My heart is set upon finding a woman whose beauty is unmatched, a perfection worthy of a sultan's queen and a reflection of a pure soul. But the world only mocks my search." The dervish nodded slowly. "The world of men cannot answer your question, Prince Ahmed. For the beauty you seek does not reside in the cities of mortals. It resides in the realm of the jinn, the land of spirits and endless magic. You seek Peri-Banu, the fairy princess, daughter of the greatest king of the spirits. Her beauty is such that even the moon hides its face in shame when she looks upon it." Ahmed felt a thrill run through him. This was the vision he had always carried. But how, he asked, his voice filled with newfound hope, can a mortal man reach the realm of the jinn and win the heart of a princess of the spirits? The dervish explained that the path was treacherous and impossible by ordinary means. However, the fates had decreed that the necessary tools for such a quest were currently available, though hidden. "You must acquire 3 talismans or magical wonders," the dervish instructed. "Each one holds a power that will negate the vast distance and impossible obstacles between your world and hers. These talismans are being sold secretly, far from here, by jinn who have fallen from favor and now traffic their magic among mortals." The dervish gave Ahmed precise directions to a distant, bustling city. "Go to the grand market of this city. Seek out a specific merchant who deals in impossible, forgotten artifacts. You must find the talismans before they are scattered to the 4 winds." Ahmed thanked the dervish profusely, feeling his destiny had finally been revealed. He departed immediately, leaving the tranquility of the forest behind for the hurried pace of the city. After days of travel, Ahmed reached the designated city. It was a massive center of trade, a crossroads where the goods of the East met the wares of the West. He navigated the crowded, labyrinthine streets towards the grand market. To his surprise, as he entered the market square, he spotted 2 familiar figures sitting near a fountain, looking weary and slightly frustrated. They were his elder brothers, Prince Houssain and Prince Ali. Ahmed rushed to them, and they embraced warmly. "Ahmed, what fortune to see you here," exclaimed Prince Houssain. "We believed you were still wandering the endless deserts." Prince Ali explained their presence. "We found many beautiful and worthy women, Ahmed, but none we believed would satisfy our father's demanding heart and secure the crown. So we decided to return early and leave the choice to fate." Ahmed concealed the secret of the fairy Princess Peri-Banu, knowing his brother's competitive nature. Instead, he spoke vaguely of the market's reputation. "I came here because I heard this city contains the rarest items in the world. Perhaps an extraordinary gift for the Sultan, something that might persuade him." The three brothers quickly agreed that searching for unique magical items might be a fairer final contest than the wives they had found. They decided to spend the last few days before their agreed return date searching the grand market for the talismans mentioned in local rumors. They agreed to meet the next morning at sunrise, right by the main archway of the market, before commencing their final critical shopping trip. The fate of the crown might depend on which one of them found the most extraordinary, magical gift. The sun rose over the city, casting long shadows across the grand market. The air, initially cool, soon became warm and vibrant with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares, the cries of exotic animals, and the chatter of travelers from 100 different kingdoms. The three noble brothers met at the appointed archway. They agreed to split up and search every corner of the vast market, promising to return by evening to compare their finds. Ahmed, guided by the mysterious dervish's words, searched with a focused intensity that went beyond simple competition. It was Prince Houssain who found the first marvel. He was drawn to a quiet corner where an old, frail man sat beside a small stack of ordinary-looking rugs. The merchant, who seemed half asleep, did not call out to customers. "Old man," said Prince Houssain, his pride immediately offended by the merchant's silence. "What goods do you sell here? These rugs appear cheap and worn." The old man simply pointed to one particular rug, which was intricately woven with silver and gold thread. "This is not a simple rug, my prince. It is the magic carpet of Houssain. Sit upon it, desire to be anywhere on earth, and you will be transported there instantly, in the blink of an eye." Prince Houssain was skeptical, but his ambition was piqued. He asked the merchant to prove its power. The merchant closed his eyes, and instantly, the rug rose slightly into the air. He then commanded it to transport a basket of fruit to the roof of the tallest building in the city, and the basket vanished, reappearing seconds later in the specified place. Realizing the immense strategic power of instant travel, the ability to conquer realms or escape any danger, Houssain was instantly determined to own it. After a lengthy negotiation, he paid the merchant a colossal sum of gold. The magic carpet of Houssain was his. Meanwhile, Prince Ali was drawn by the crowd gathered around a different vendor. This merchant was showing a small, narrow tube made of highly polished brass and carved cedarwood. "What is this curious item?" asked Prince Ali, his intellectual curiosity dominating his thought process. "This, good sir," the merchant explained proudly, "is the tube of Ali. It is a telescope, but unlike any you have ever seen. Place your eye to the lens, desire to see anything in the world, no matter how secret, how distant, or how hidden, and the image will appear before you as clearly as if it were right here in your hand." The merchant demonstrated its power, showing the amazed crowd the interior of the Sultan's treasury back in the capital city, hundreds of miles away. Ali immediately understood the intellectual advantage of such an item. With this magic tube, he could spy on any enemy, gain knowledge of any secret, and find wisdom instantly. This was the ultimate tool for a future philosopher king. He negotiated fiercely and paid an equally enormous sum for the artifact. Prince Ahmed's search was the hardest. He wandered the Isles, looking for anything that felt ancient or otherworldly, knowing he sought not power or sight, but a tool for an impossible romance. Finally, he found a small, dark stall managed by a veiled woman. She held only one item, a plain, unremarkable apple. It was a pale green color, and it had a soft, earthy scent. "What is the virtue of this simple fruit?" Ahmed asked, feeling a strange pull toward the item. The veiled woman replied in a soft, musical voice, "This is the apple of life. Smell it, and it will instantly cure any ailment, no matter how deadly. It restores the fading breath of the dying and grants immediate, vibrant health." Ahmed realized this was a tool of immense compassion and life-giving power, something greater than war or wealth. While it did not lead him directly to Peri-Banu, he instinctively knew its value to his quest. A king must have the power to heal, and a lover must possess the power to sustain life. He paid a fair price for the apple of life. As evening fell, the three brothers met as agreed. They gathered their items, each immensely proud of his purchase, knowing that the real test was about to begin. The three princes gathered in their private chambers at the inn, their faces alight with the excitement of their purchases. They spread the magic carpet of Houssain on the floor and placed the tube of Ali and the apple of life upon it. Prince Houssain, ever the proud leader, spoke first. "We have each found a marvel worthy of a sultan's gaze. My carpet can carry the army of India across oceans instantly. It is surely the most powerful of the three." Prince Ali countered immediately. "Your carpet is fast, brother, but my tube is the key to all knowledge. What good is an army if you cannot see the enemy's movements? Knowledge is the true power, and my tube is superior." Prince Ahmed, modest as always, defended his own choice. "Both items are wondrous, but my apple of life holds the power of healing and preservation. Is there any power greater than saving life itself, especially the life of our father, the Sultan? This apple ensures his longevity and our kingdom's stability." They argued for a long time, each convinced his own find was the most valuable. Finally, they realized that since each item was impossibly rare and powerful, they had not simplified the problem. They had only complicated it. The Sultan would still have an agonizing choice between three equally miraculous gifts. "Since we have agreed that the prize is the crown and the condition is the bride," said Prince Houssain, "and since the deadline for our return is quickly approaching, we should not wait any longer. Let us use the power of these talismans to decide the true winner." Prince Ali quickly suggested an idea. "Let us use my magic tube to look upon the prospective brides we each considered. We can instantly verify which woman truly possesses the beauty or wisdom that might satisfy the Sultan." Houssain readily agreed. They started with the women Houssain had selected in the north. Prince Ali held the brass tube to his eye and focused his will. The image of the northern princess appeared in the lens. She was beautiful and richly adorned, but Ali and Ahmed agreed that her features were common compared to the legends they sought. Houssain was visibly disappointed. Next, they examined the woman Prince Ali had selected in Persia. She was indeed sharp and witty, but her beauty was eclipsed by a cold expression. Ali was forced to admit that she was not worthy of the crown. It was Ahmed's turn, and a strange silence fell upon the chamber. "Now, Ahmed," said Prince Houssain, "show us the wondrous beauty you have been seeking in the empty deserts of the East. Where does she reside?" Ahmed swallowed, knowing this was the moment of truth. He could not mention Peri-Banu, the fairy princess, but he knew he must use the tube to find her home. He took the tube of Eli, closed his eyes, and focused on the vague, perfect vision that the dervish had described. He opened his eyes and looked through the lens. In the small glass appeared a vision of impossible clarity. It was not a mortal kingdom. It was a palace built of translucent crystal and woven moonlight, resting in a garden where trees bore jewels instead of fruit. This was the realm of the jinn, and in the center of the garden, sitting by a fountain of liquid gold, was a woman whose beauty defied description. Her hair was like woven moonlight, her garments were threads of pure light, and her face was so perfect that it radiated a gentle, supernatural light. This was Peri-Banu. Ahmed felt his heart stop. She was beyond his greatest dream. His brothers, looking over his shoulder at the image reflected in the tube's glass, gasped. They saw the dazzling palace and the ethereal beauty of the fairy princess. Jealousy, sharp and sudden, pierced the hearts of Houssain and Eli. "By the stars," exclaimed Houssain, his voice rough with envy. "That is no mortal woman. That is a princess of the spirits. Ahmed, you have found the impossible prize." Eli stared, his usual calm demeanor gone. He saw instantly that this supernatural beauty eclipsed any woman he or Houssain could ever find. The crown was effectively lost to Ahmed. The competition had taken a dark, new turn. The realization that Prince Ahmed possessed the key to the ultimate prize, a beauty far surpassing anything in the mortal world, left Prince Houssain and Prince Eli gripped by fierce jealousy. The initial competition for the crown had now curdled into personal resentment. Houssain's voice was cold as he spoke. "Ahmed, your fortune is remarkable. To have found the resting place of a fairy princess. But this is not a contest of magic. It is a competition for a queen worthy of our father's throne. Do you truly believe the Sultan will accept a bride from the realm of the jinn?" "That is between the Sultan and me," Ahmed replied, his gaze fixed on the image of Peri-Banu, his heart soaring with hope. "I seek only her perfection, and I believe my pure devotion will convince our father." His brothers said no more, but their glances were dark with silent planning. They knew that their own purchases, the magic carpet and the magic tube, suddenly seemed trivial next to the prospect of marrying a creature of pure light. They began to plot how they might undermine Ahmed's quest. However, fate intervened before they could act on their petty schemes. Suddenly, a strange dark cloud seemed to pass over the sun, and the vibrant atmosphere of the jinn image in the magic tube flickered and vanished. The brothers turned their attention back to the tube, and Prince Eli focused it immediately upon their own capital city. The image that appeared was one of chaos and deep sorrow. The gates of the royal palace were draped in black banners. Servants and courtiers were weeping openly. Lying motionless upon his royal bed, surrounded by distraught physicians, was their father, the Sultan, struck down by a sudden, mysterious ailment. "Our father," cried Prince Houssain, forgetting all jealousy for a moment. "He is dying. The illness is consuming him rapidly." The physicians were helpless, shaking their heads in defeat. The Sultan's breath was shallow, and his face was pale, already bearing the gray hue of death. "We must return instantly," commanded Prince Eli. "Houssain, your magic carpet." There is no time for horses or ships. In that moment of dire crisis, the true value of the talismans became clear. The magic tube had provided the critical sight, and now the magic carpet will provide the critical speed. The three brothers quickly packed their belongings, and Ahmed clutched his apple of life tightly. They stepped onto the magic carpet of Houssain, which was large enough to hold all three. Prince Houssain focused his mind with desperate urgency. "Take us to the Sultan's chamber instantly." With a soft whoosh, the room around them dissolved, and the next instant, they were standing inside the Sultan's private bedroom. The shocked courtiers and physicians fell silent, believing the three princes had arrived by supernatural means. The sight of the Sultan was heartbreaking. He was barely clinging to life. His royal physicians, pale and defeated, were preparing to pronounce the end. Prince Ahmed rushed forward. He pushed past the physicians, holding the pale green apple of life to his father's face. "Father, smell this," Ahmed commanded, holding the enchanted fruit directly beneath the Sultan's nose. As the Sultan inhaled the soft, earthy scent of the apple of life, an impossible thing happened. The gray pallor instantly vanished from his face. His eyes, which had been dull and distant, opened wide, clear and healthy. A deep, powerful breath filled his lungs, and the immense strength of the great Sultan returned to him in an instant. The Sultan sat up, looking around in utter astonishment. "My sons, you are here. I was lost in darkness, but now I feel a sudden, perfect health coursing through my veins." The Sultan hugged his sons, thanking them profoundly. He praised Ahmed, whose purchase had saved his life. The apple of life was proven to be the most vital possession, a marvel of curing unmatched in the world. Ahmed had saved his father, but the competition was still unresolved. The Sultan was alive, but he still needed a queen. The next day, the Sultan, fully recovered and filled with vibrant health thanks to the apple of life, summoned his entire court. He sat upon his throne, eager to hear the final reports of his son's quests and to render his critical judgment. The three princes stood before him. Prince Houssain presented the magic carpet, demonstrating its incredible power by instantly transporting the Sultan's favorite pillow from the furthest tower and back again. The court gasped in awe at the power of instant travel. Prince Eli then presented the magic tube, demonstrating its power by showing the Sultan a live image of his distant brother, the King of Persia, sitting in his own private courtyard. The Sultan was astonished by the power of sight across impossible distances. Finally, Prince Ahmed presented the apple of life. He reminded the court of how the sweet scent alone had instantly reversed the fatal sickness that gripped the Sultan's body. The Sultan smiled and spoke with profound wisdom. "My sons, you have each proven your bravery and diligence. Houssain, your magic carpet is the key to defense and rapid movement. Allah, your magic tube is the key to knowledge and foresight. And Ahmed, your apple of life is the key to health and survival, a gift that has already saved my own life. If the crown depended only upon these artifacts, Ahmed would be the winner, for there is no greater power than preserving life." The Sultan then paused, his expression growing serious. However, the primary condition for the crown was not a marvelous gift, but a worthy queen. "Houssain, you have returned without the brides you sought, stating that no mortal woman was worthy. But Ahmed, you return without a bride as well. Where is the perfection you claim to have found?" Prince Ahmed knew he could no longer hide the truth. His brother's jealous gazes pressured him, urging him toward a confrontation that would either lead to the crown or to utter disaster. "My lord and father," Ahmed began, his voice clear and resonant, "the perfection I sought does not live under a mortal roof. Through the aid of a holy dervish, I discovered the location of the most beautiful woman who has ever lived, Peri-Banu, the fairy princess, daughter of the king of the jinn." A wave of astonished whispers swept through the court. The Sultan, however, remained unmoved. A fairy princess? Son, you speak of legends and dreams. We are men of this world, and my throne requires a queen of flesh and blood, not mere spirit. Your vision is magnificent, but it is unsubstantiated. Houssain and Ali immediately seized the opportunity. Father, said Houssain, Ahmed speaks of an impossible dream. He has no proof that this fairy realm is real, let alone that its princess would consent to marry a man. The Sultan raised his hand for silence. He looked at Ahmed, seeing the sincerity in the young prince's eyes. I believe your passion, Ahmed, but I cannot risk the stability of the kingdom on a myth. Therefore, I will set a final, definitive challenge for all three of you. Since Ahmed claims to know the way to the realm of the jinn, I command all three of you to prove its reality. I demand an item from that world, a piece of craftsmanship that is unquestionably made by the hands of the jinn. The Sultan, inspired by the magnificence of Ahmed's dream, decided on a specific test. The item must be a tent small enough to be carried in the hand, yet large enough to provide shelter for an entire army. Bring me this magical tent of the jinn, and I will know that Ahmed's quest is real, and the one who brings it will be the winner. This was a final, brilliant stroke of the Sultan's wisdom. It required Ahmed to return to the jinn path, but it also forced Houssain and Ali to pursue the same dangerous quest, giving them a final desperate chance to steal Ahmed's victory. The competition was on again, and the stakes were higher than ever. The Sultan's new decree, the demand for the magical tent of the jinn, reignited the fierce competition among the three princes. The crown now rested not on the beauty of a bride or the power of a single gift, but on the ability to prove that the realm of the jinn was real. The brothers were given renewed funds, and preparations were made for their departure. This time, the quest was focused and directed by the Sultan himself, yet the jealousy among the three was far worse than before. Prince Houssain and Prince Ali, now fully convinced that Ahmed possessed some secret map or powerful knowledge leading to the jinn's world, immediately began to plot against him. We shall not let him escape us again, hissed Prince Houssain to his brother Ali. This time we have the tools to observe and follow him. Your magic tube shall be our spy, and my magic carpet shall be our speed. Prince Ali readily agreed. They realized that the key to finding the magical tent was finding the supplier of the jinn's wares, which Ahmed, through his mysterious dervish, already seemed to know. Meanwhile, Ahmed, sensing his brother's renewed hostility, was deeply thoughtful. He knew the dervish had only guided him to the city where the jinn's cast-off items were sold. He reasoned that the magical tent must also be sold in that same grand market, as it was the only place where jinn artifacts were known to surface among mortals. Ahmed waited until the cover of a cloudy night before departing the capital city. He traveled quickly and secretly, hoping to reach the city of the talismans and begin his discreet search before his brothers could track him. But his elder brothers were already prepared. As soon as the first reports reached them that Ahmed had departed, Houssain and Ali stepped onto the magic carpet. "Take us to the place where Ahmed stopped for the night," commanded Houssain. In an instant, they were transported. From that point forward, using the combined power of the magic carpet and the magic tube, they observed Ahmed's progress constantly. They saw him travel for days toward the bustling crossroads where they had purchased their own magical artifacts. Houssain and Ali arrived at the Grand Market City several hours ahead of Ahmed. They did not appear openly, but used the magic carpet to conceal themselves in a deserted watchtower overlooking the market square. "He will come here," said Prince Ali confidently, looking through his magic tube at the merchant stalls. "The market is the source of the jinn items. We must intercept the merchant before Ahmed even speaks to him." The two elder princes spent several anxious hours watching the throng of merchants below. Ahmed arrived the next morning, appearing tired but determined. He immediately began searching the obscure corners of the marketplace, looking for stalls that sold ancient or forgotten items. He spent the entire day questioning vendors and searching dark alleyways, but found no mention of a magical tent or any item of Jinn origin. The merchants were either ignorant or wary of a prince asking such dangerous questions. Ahmed knew his brothers were likely watching him, but he could not afford to waste time. He realized that Jinn items were not sold publicly. They were sold only by specific, hidden vendors. He decided to wait until nightfall and return to the area where he had found the Apple of Life, hoping to find the mysterious veiled woman who had sold him a healing fruit, believing she might hold the key to the magical tent. As darkness fell, Houssain and Eli watched Ahmed leave the market and head back toward his inn. Their opportunity had arrived. They planned to use the cover of night to descend into the market and search for the veiled woman themselves, hoping to secure the magical tent and finally end Ahmed's quest forever. A deep silence settled over the grand market as the city slept. Only the flickering lamps of the night watch and the faint scent of spices remained. This was the moment Prince Houssain and Prince Ali had been waiting for. They descended from the deserted watchtower upon a magic carpet, landing silently near the quarter where Ahmed had purchased the Apple of Life. They quickly located the small, dark stall where the veiled woman had sold her wares. The veiled woman was still there, sitting patiently, as if waiting for a specific, important customer. She was illuminated by a single, weak lantern. Prince Houssain stepped forward, his voice low but sharp with authority. "We seek the seller of rare and miraculous artifacts. We know you sold an enchanted apple to our younger brother. Now we require an item of similar origin, the magical tint of the Jinn." The veiled woman slowly raised her gaze. Her eyes were deep and knowing, holding no surprise at their sudden, silent appearance. "You speak of an item whose magic is beyond compare. It is indeed a creation of the Jinn, requiring the devotion of 1,000 spirits to weave its threads. Why do princes of India seek such a thing?" "It is a command from our Sultan, the final test for the crown," Prince Ali explained, eager to finish the transaction and secure their victory. "Do you possess this tint?" The veiled woman reached beneath her simple stall and drew forth a small, seemingly insignificant object. It was a wooden case, no larger than a man's palm, carved from dark sandalwood and sealed with a silver clasp. "Within this box," she said, her voice soft and mesmerizing, "is the tent of the Jinn. It is lightweight and portable, easily carried by a child. Yet release the clasp and it will instantly unfurl, providing complete shelter, with walls strong as mountains, capable of housing not merely a regiment, but an entire standing army with all its supply wagons and horses." Houssain's eyes gleamed with covetous triumph. This was the exact item the Sultan had demanded. His own power would be restored, and Ahmed would return empty-handed. "Name your price," Houssain demanded, pulling out a heavy pouch of gold and jewels. The veiled woman smiled slightly, a mysterious gesture. "The price, Prince, is not mere gold. The Jinn value magic above wealth. I require a payment that will empty your coffers entirely, a price that proves your desperate need for the crown." She named a sum that was truly astronomical, far exceeding the price paid for the magic carpet and the magic tube combined. It was a sum that would deplete the entire personal fortune Houssain had brought for his journey. Prince Houssain hesitated for a moment. The cost was staggering, but the stakes were the throne of India. He quickly glanced at Prince Ali, who nodded fiercely, urging him to pay. "Done," Houssain declared, pushing a massive, heavy pouch of gold and gems toward the woman. "The tent is ours." The veiled woman exchanged the sandalwood box for the treasure. "May the item serve the prince who pays the truest price," she murmured cryptically. Houssain and I immediately stepped back onto the magic carpet, their hearts pounding with the thrill of victory. They had successfully stolen the prize from Ahmed before he even had a chance to ask for it. They returned to the safety of their hidden watchtower. Houssain, unable to wait, unsealed the sandalwood box. Inside lay a tiny piece of folded fabric, no bigger than a coin, woven with shimmering, translucent thread. He held it in his hand, marveling at the sheer concentration of magic contained within. Using the magic tube, Ali focused on Ahmed's inn. They saw their younger brother return to the marketplace, searching for the veiled woman, only to find the stall completely empty and the woman gone. They watched with cruel satisfaction as Ahmed's shoulders slumped in disappointment. He searched the area for a long time, questioning the watchman, but found no clue. He had clearly realized the key artifact had been taken by his rivals. Houssain and Ali exchanged triumphant smiles. They had the magical tent, the final proof of the Jinn realm, and with it, the crown of India was now surely theirs. The only question now was which of them would ultimately present the item to the Sultan. The moment of triumph over Ahmed quickly evaporated into bitter conflict between Prince Houssain and Prince Ali. Sitting hidden in the dusty watchtower, gazing at the miniature magical tent of the Jinn, the brothers began a fierce argument over who deserved the ultimate credit for its acquisition. "The crown is mine," declared Prince Houssain, clutching the small sandalwood box containing the tent. "I was the one who supplied the gold. The price was astronomical, draining my entire fortune. Without my wealth, this tent would still belong to the Jinn's agent." Prince Ali scoffed, his face dark with anger. "Your wealth is useless if you cannot find the target. I provided this site. My magic tube enabled us to spy on Ahmed and anticipate his moves. My intellect and my tube secured the prize, not your gold. Furthermore, my magic tube gave us the only possible proof that the fairy Princess Peri-Banu even exists. The crown should be mine." The argument escalated quickly. They had been allies only in their shared jealousy of Ahmed, but now that the prize was physically in their grasp, their mutual greed tore them apart. Houssain's pride and Ali's sharp, calculating nature clashed violently. "You speak of sight and intellect, brother," Houssain retorted, standing up. "But I hold the item that satisfies the Sultan's final command. And I hold the only means of returning quickly to the capital. My magic carpet trumps all your logic." Houssain was suddenly filled with a treacherous, cold thought. Why share the glory or the risk with Ali? If he returned alone, presenting the magical tent and claiming full credit for the difficult acquisition, the crown would surely be his without question. Before Ali could protest further, Houssain snatched the magic tube from his brother's belt, intending to silence his opposition completely. Ali immediately lunged forward to reclaim his priceless artifact. A brief, desperate struggle ensued within the cramped space of the watchtower. Houssain, utilizing his superior strength, threw Ali against the stone wall. Ali stumbled, momentarily stunned. That was all the opening Houssain needed. Clutching the small box and a magic tube, he swiftly unrolled the magic carpet beneath his feet. "Farewell, Prince Ali," Houssain sneered, his voice ringing with absolute betrayal. "Enjoy your solitary journey back to the capital. I will present the tent and claim my throne." With a whoosh of air and a sudden jolt, Houssain instantly vanished, leaving Prince Ali alone and stranded in the abandoned watchtower, hundreds of miles from his home, possessing only the apple of life which Ahmed had carelessly left behind during the earlier struggle in the market. Meanwhile, Prince Ahmed returned to his own room, his heart heavy with disappointment. He had been outmaneuvered. He realized his brothers must have spied on him, used the speed of the magic carpet to arrive before him, and secured the item the Sultan demanded. The immediate path to the throne was closed. Ahmed sat on his bed, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. Yet he was not defeated. He remembered the advice of the dervish and the vision he had seen in the magic tube. His true goal was not the crown, but the perfect beauty of Peri-Banu. The magical tint was merely proof. The princess herself was the prize. He knew that simply returning empty-handed to the Sultan, even with the noble apple of life, would not be enough now that the Sultan knew a greater prize existed. Ahmed had to find the realm of the jinn. He focused his mind, recalling every detail of the dervish's directions and the fleeting image he had seen in the magic tube, the distinct colors of the crystal palace, the unique jewels on the trees, and the faint, shimmering light that marked the boundary of the fairy realm. Ahmed began meticulously planning a solo, dangerous expedition. He sold off all his remaining non-essential jewels and possessions, turning them into supplies, durable clothing, strong ropes, and enough provisions for a journey into lands that maps did not chart. He did not possess the instant speed of the carpet or the instant sight of the tube, but he possessed the courage of pure devotion and the willingness to face the unknown. He decided his only course was to abandon the competition for the tent and instead pursue the location the dervish had vaguely described as the threshold to the jinn world, a specific, uncharted mountain range far to the east, rumored to hold the key to the spirit realm. His brothers had chosen objects of power and greed. Ahmed chose the path of the heart. He knew that the only way to win the hand of Peri-Banu was to reach her domain, a place of impossible magic, relying solely on his wits, his resilience, and the strength of his love. He would not return until he had won the fairy princess herself. The quest had now transformed from a race for a crown into an epic journey for love. Prince Ali was left raging and humiliated in the dusty, deserted watchtower. His intellect, which he prided himself on, had been utterly defeated by the brute strength and simple greed of his elder brother Houssain. He had lost his magic tube, his dignity, and his only quick way home. He was left with nothing but the clothes on his back and the apple of life, which Ahmed had left behind. Ali paced the tower floor furiously, his mind racing for a path of vengeance. Traveling home on foot would take months, during which time Houssain would surely have seized the throne. He cursed his brother's treachery and his own momentary weakness. He realized the only immediate power he retained was the apple of life. Although it could not transport him or give him sight, it was an item of proven supreme virtue. He decided to undertake the long journey back, using his knowledge and the simple kindness of strangers, keeping the apple hidden as his final proof of worth, even if the crown seemed lost. His new goal was not the throne, but exposing Houssain's betrayal to the Sultan. Even as Ali began his long, punishing journey westward, Prince Houssain, riding the swift magic carpet, arrived back at the capital city in a matter of hours. Houssain strode into the royal court, presenting the small sandalwood box with immense pride. He exaggerated the difficulty of the quest and dramatically demonstrated the power of the magical tent. He unclasped the box, and a tiny scrap of fabric instantly unfurled, spreading out to cover the entire courtyard, sheltering thousands of courtiers beneath its impossibly vast, shimmering dome. The assembled noblemen were speechless. "My lord and father," Houssain declared triumphantly, "I alone succeeded in the final test. I have brought you the proof from the realm of the jinn." I claim the crown and the right to seek my queen." The Sultan was profoundly impressed by the magical tint. It was proof undeniable that Ahmed's talk of the Jinn realm was true. However, the Sultan was a man of deep experience and intuition. He saw the suspicious absence of his other two sons and the overwhelming haste of Houssain's return. "The magical tint is indeed a marvel, my son," the Sultan stated, his voice firm, "and you have shown remarkable resourcefulness. However, the initial deadline for your return is still several weeks away. I will not make a final, irreversible decision on the crown until the agreed-upon day. The competition remains open until then. The tent will remain in my keeping, and your claims will be weighed against those of Ali and Ahmed when they finally return." This decision was a severe check on Houssain's premature celebrations, forcing him to wait in anxious anticipation, fearing the return of his brothers. Meanwhile, Prince Ahmed was deep into his solitary journey eastward. He had abandoned all pretense of competing for the crown through gifts. His sole mission was to find Peri-Banu, the fairy princess, and bring her back as his bride. The landscape grew increasingly difficult. He crossed high plateaus and dense, tangled jungles, guided by the sun and the dervish's initial directions toward the remote mountain range. He used his knowledge of survival, gained during his initial travels, to hunt and find water. There were no paths, and every day was a battle against the elements and the wild beasts that roamed the desolate lands. After weeks of unrelenting travel, he reached the base of the mountain range. These were not ordinary peaks. Their summits were hidden not by clouds, but by a strange, perpetual silver mist. The stone itself seemed to shimmer with an inner light, signifying that he was approaching the boundary between the mortal world and the realm of the Jinn. As Ahmed began his ascent, the air around him became thin and strangely silent. He encountered flowers that glowed with unnatural colors and streams that flowed with water that tasted of crystallized honey. The atmosphere was charged with subtle, pervasive magic. The climb was immensely challenging. He faced sheer cliffs and sudden, bewildering shifts in the weather. The mountains were deliberately confusing, designed to deter mortal entry. Yet Ahmed pressed on, his endurance driven by the image of Peri-Banu he had seen in the magic tube, a vision that was now the core of his very existence. He knew that the true trials of the Jinn realm were about to begin, and that his mere presence on these mystical slopes was an act of profound, almost impossible devotion. He had traded the competition for the crown for a direct confrontation with the supernatural world. The ascent of the shimmering mountains was the most difficult challenge Ahmed had yet faced. The peaks were designed to break the will of any mortal who dared to intrude. He spent several grueling days climbing, navigating cliffs that defied gravity and surviving sudden hailstorms composed of crystal shards. The magic that permeated the stone was heavy, making his mind dizzy and his limbs heavy. Finally, driven by the unwavering image of Peri-Banu, he reached a high plateau hidden deep within the silver mist. The plateau ended abruptly at a sheer wall of rock, and set into the rock was a cave entrance, shrouded in shadow. As Ahmed approached the opening, a massive, silent entity materialized. It was a guardian, a huge Jinn taking the terrifying form of a lion sculpted from black volcanic glass, its eyes glowing with cold, emerald fire. The guardian of the threshold blocked the only path forward. Ahmed drew his sword, prepared to fight, but the magical lion did not move to attack. Instead, a deep, rumbling voice echoed not from its throat, but directly into Ahmed's mind. "Mortal, you trespass where the air itself forbids your presence. You seek the domain of the spirits. If you value your life, you will turn back now. Only those destined by fate or those possessing impossible virtues may pass this threshold. Ahmed realized that strength would fail him here. He sheathed his sword, an act of submission and sincerity. "I am Prince Ahmed of India," he spoke clearly to the imposing figure. "I possess no great magical strength, nor am I driven by conquest. I am driven by a devotion so profound it compels me to seek the perfection of Princess Peri-Banu, whom I have only seen in a fleeting vision. My only virtue is the purity of my heart. If that is insufficient, then my journey ends here." The black lion remained motionless for a long moment, studying the prince's earnest gaze. The emerald fire in its eyes seemed to soften, judging the truth in Ahmed's soul. Finally, the guardian gave a low, resonant roar, which caused the ground to tremble, and then slowly, the massive form of black glass dissolved into the shadows of the cave. The path was open. Ahmed stepped into the cave, which was not dark, but illuminated by a constant, soft, blue light that hummed with energy. He walked along the winding passage for what felt like an hour, and then emerged onto the other side of the mountain range. He gasped, halting in utter awe. Gone was the barren, cold rock. Before him stretched a valley of impossible beauty, the true outer border of the realm of the jinn. The air was warm, scented with sweet, unfamiliar flowers. Fountains of silver water cascaded down moss-covered cliffs, and the sun, though distant, cast colors unlike any he had seen on earth. He continued walking, utterly mesmerized, until he came upon a small, beautiful dwelling woven from thick green vines and crystallized flowers. Sitting outside was an elderly woman, dressed in robes of silver silk, attending to a garden of glowing herbs. Her face, though lined with age, held a kind and regal dignity. Ahmed approached cautiously and bowed. "Peace be upon you, madam. I am a stranger lost in this wondrous land." The woman looked up, her expression one of profound wisdom and a gentle sorrow. "Lost, Prince Ahmed, you are not. You are precisely where your destiny demanded you be. I am Humi, the caretaker of this threshold, and the sister of the king of the jinn. I am also the aunt of the Princess Peri-Banu." Ahmed's heart leaped. He had found the family connection. He immediately confessed his purpose, his quest for the perfect bride, and his desire to seek Peri-Banu's hand in marriage. Homi listened to his entire story, including the jealous treachery of his brothers and the Sultan's final impossible demand for the jinn's magical tent. When he finished, she shook her head sadly. "My dear prince," she said, her voice filled with pity, "the Princess Peri-Banu is not only the most beautiful being in the cosmos, but she is also bound by ancient, fierce laws. No mortal man can simply ask for her hand and expect acceptance. Furthermore, the magical tent your brothers now possess was a gift to my brother, the king, and they have acquired it by foul means from a disgraced agent. Your claim to the crown through that tent is false." She smiled softly. "Yet your devotion has pleased me, and your kindness in sparing the guardian proved your purity. I will help you, but you must know the path forward requires not just bravery, but absolute cleverness and patience. You must spend a year in my care, learning the customs, laws, and most importantly, the weaknesses of the jinn, before you can even dare to enter the royal palace and seek my niece." Ahmed gratefully accepted the condition. He knew that this year of careful preparation was the only way to succeed where brute force and simple magic had failed. He settled into the tranquil valley, ready to begin his long necessary apprenticeship under the wise guidance of Princess Homi. His new long path to Peri-Banu had finally begun. Prince Ahmed began his year-long apprenticeship under the wise guidance of Princess Homi. The isolated, mystical valley was his school, and the curriculum was the complex, ancient knowledge of the realm of the jinn. Homi taught him that the jinn, though powerful, were creatures of rigid ritual and specific vulnerability. She revealed that they despise iron, which disrupts their flow of magic, and that certain invocations spoken in the human tongue can temporarily bind their elemental power. She instructed him in the intricate etiquette required to address jinn royalty, emphasizing that a single mistake in ceremony could mean instant death. Ahmed devoted himself entirely to his studies. He learned how to identify the subtle signs of jinn presence, how their illusions were woven, and how to maintain his mortal calm amidst their overwhelming magical influence. He was not training to fight them, but to coexist with them and, ultimately, to win the respect of their ruling family. He knew that the only way to earn Peri-Banu was to master her world. The days passed quickly in the valley, each one bringing him closer to his goal. The year felt like a single, extended lesson in patience and resilience, the very virtues he would need to win the fairy princess. Meanwhile, in the mortal world, time had run out. The agreed-upon deadline for the prince's return arrived and passed in the capital city. The Sultan was distraught. He was grateful for the apple of life and impressed by the magical tint, but the disappearance of two of his sons weighed heavily on his mind. He delayed the final judgment for several weeks, hoping for any sign of Ali or Ahmed. Prince Houssain, arrogant and impatient, used this delay to his advantage. He gathered his supporters in the court and began pressing the Sultan relentlessly. "My lord and father," Houssain demanded publicly, standing beside the spot where the magical tent had been displayed. "The deadline has passed. I returned in time, presenting an artifact that proves my worth and fulfills your command. My brothers have clearly deserted their post and abandoned their claim to the throne. You are obligated by honor and by your own decree to announce me as the new crown prince." The Sultan was leaning towards yielding to this pressure. He could not risk instability in the realm. The royal decree had been clear, and Houssain was the only son to present the required proof. Just as the Sultan prepared to deliver the fateful proclamation that would crown Houssain, a commotion erupted at the palace gates. A figure stumbled into the court. He was exhausted and ragged, covered in the dust and sweat of a long, desperate journey. He was barely recognizable, but the courtiers soon realized who it was: Prince Ali. Prince Ali, having endured months of arduous travel, finally stood before his father and his triumphant, deceitful brother. He clutched the apple of life tightly in his hand. "Father," Ali cried out, his voice hoarse but filled with burning truth. "Do not let that treacherous liar steal the crown. Houssain is not worthy." The court erupted in shocked murmurs. Houssain's face immediately turned crimson with rage and fear. "Silence, deserter!" Houssain yelled. "You abandoned your quest and now return to spew lies. You have no proof. The tent is mine." Prince Ali, ignoring his brother, knelt before the Sultan. He presented the apple of life. "My lord, I may have lost my other artifacts, but I possess the apple of life which Ahmed purchased, and I still possess the truth." Houssain did not bravely acquire the tent. He stole it from the merchant and then committed a foul act of betrayal. He used the magic carpet to sneak behind Ahmed, stole the tent, and then used the carpet again to abandon me in the wilderness without a coin or a horse. He is a traitor and a thief, unfit to rule. The Sultan looked from the polished, powerful Houssain to the weary, honest Ella, then down at the two artifacts, the proven apple of life and the suspiciously acquired magical tent. He saw the raw hatred in Houssain's eyes and the desperate sincerity in Eli's posture. The Sultan was once again plunged into deep doubt. He had a proven liar who possessed the required artifact, and a proven honest man who possessed the artifact of healing. But still, the crown could not be awarded, for Ahmed, the true owner of the apple and the seeker of the fairy princess, was still missing. The Sultan realized he must investigate the grave charge of treachery before making any final, irreversible judgment. The Sultan, a man whose long life had taught him that truth often lies in the shadows, ordered a discreet and thorough investigation into the claims of his sons. He could not ignore Prince Ali's charges of treachery, yet he also had to recognize the power of the magical tint presented by Prince Houssain. The Sultan's most trusted spies were dispatched to the distant market city where the artifacts were purchased. They returned with news that confirmed Ali's desperation and Houssain's suspicious haste. The spies confirmed that Houssain had indeed paid an impossible sum of gold, and that the older prince had left the city suddenly, seemingly abandoning his brother. Though the spies could not prove the theft of the tent, the circumstances surrounding Houssain's return were now highly questionable. The Sultan publicly maintained his neutrality, keeping the magical tent and the apple of life locked securely within the royal treasury. Privately, his contempt for Houssain grew, yet the Sultan's promise to the kingdom required proof, not merely intuition. He realized that the only person who could truly resolve the issue was the missing Prince Ahmed. The Sultan prayed daily for his youngest son's safe return. Prince Houssain, sensing the tide of opinion turning against him, became desperate. He knew that if the Sultan fully investigated the events in the watchtower, his entire elaborate lie would unravel. He started plotting small, petty acts of sabotage against Ali, trying to discredit his brother further in court. He spread rumors of Ali's madness and poverty, even attempting one night to sneak into Ali's chamber to steal the apple of life, which Houssain feared Ali might use as final proof of Ahmed's good character. Fortunately, Ali was vigilant, and the attempt failed. The focus now shifts thousands of miles away, to the tranquil valley in the realm of the Jinn, where Prince Ahmed's apprenticeship was reaching its end. Ahmed stood before Princess Homi, no longer the naive traveler who had first climbed the mystical mountain. His eyes were clear and steady, and he possessed a deep understanding of the unique forces that govern the world of the spirits. He had mastered the strange, flowing language of the Jinn and had learned the proper names of their most powerful rulers. "My prince," Homi said, her voice resonant with approval. "Your year of study is complete. You have shown the rare patience and genuine respect that few mortals possess. You are now ready to attempt the impossible, to enter the palace of my brother, the king of the Jinn, and seek the hand of my niece, Peri-Banu." She warned him that the king of the Jinn, her brother, was a harsh and fiercely protective father. He had devised several trials for any mortal suitor, trials that were universally considered death sentences. Ahmed would need every piece of knowledge he had gained. Homi then presented Ahmed with two crucial aids. The first was a ring of discretion, made not of common gold, but of an enchanted alloy that would render him largely unnoticed by lower-ranking Jinn. This would allow him to observe the palace before making his formal request. The second item was a simple, small iron charm. The Jinn despise iron, Homi explained softly. Wear this charm secretly beneath your garments. If you are ever overwhelmed by the Jinn's potent illusions or powerful magics, hold this charm firmly. Its presence will break the enchantment and remind you of the mortal reality, granting you a moment of clarity and strength. Finally, Homi gave him the exact guarded instructions for entering the capital city of the Jinn. She told him to travel to a deep gorge several miles from the valley, where, on the night of the full moon, a hidden gateway would open briefly. This gate would lead directly into the royal city where the king and Peri-Banu resided. "Go now, Prince Ahmed," Homie commanded gently, "Remember everything you have learned. Your devotion has brought you here. Now your intelligence must carry you through the 3 impossible trials that the king will surely set for you. Only then can you hope to win the heart of my niece and return with your rightful bride." Ahmed bowed low to his wise mentor, expressing his profound gratitude. Clutching the ring and the iron charm, he turned his back on the tranquil valley and headed toward the dark gorge, prepared to face the impossible rules and overwhelming power of the King of the Jinn. The real quest, the most dangerous part of his journey, was about to begin. Prince Ahmed journeyed onward, carrying the weight of his destiny and the specialized knowledge gained from Princess Homie. The land grew wilder, and the air heavier with magic as he approached the deep black gorge that marked the true secret boundary of the realm of the Jinn. He reached the gorge just as the massive silver disk of the full moon ascended into the clear sky. The light spilled down into the gorge, and where the light touched the deepest shadow, a strange sight unfolded. The rock face did not open, but shimmered, dissolving into a curtain of swirling liquid silver. This was the hidden gateway. Ahmed took a final, deep mortal breath. He ensured the ring of discretion was firmly on his finger, and the iron charm was concealed close to his heart. With a steady resolve, he stepped through the shimmering curtain. The sensation was overwhelming. It was not a physical transit, but a complete disruption of his senses, like falling through pure light and silence. He felt the heavy magic of the Jinn realm engulf him, but the iron charm anchored his mind to reality, just as Homie had promised. He emerged from the passage and found himself standing in a narrow alleyway, utterly dwarfed by the structures around him. He had arrived in the royal capital of the Jinn. The city was a spectacle that beggared description. Buildings were constructed not of brick and mortar, but of massive polished crystals that refracted light into rainbows of color. Pillars were carved from solid gold that did not tarnish, and the streets were paved with materials that glowed with a faint, internal luminescence. The very air was thick with the scent of ozone and exotic blossoms. Jinn moved through the streets with an easy, silent grace. They took many forms. Some were tall, humanoid figures draped in robes of pure starlight. Others were winged creatures of fire and shadow. And still others appeared as familiar animals, but possessed eyes burning with deep ancient intelligence. Thanks to the Ring of Discretion, Ahmed moved largely unseen. The Jinn's attention simply slid past him, registering him as a harmless, insignificant flicker in the busy environment. He moved slowly, observing the strange rituals and silent communications of the spirit inhabitants, remembering Homie's lessons about Jinn etiquette. He navigated the dizzying, magical metropolis until he reached the center of the capital, where the royal palace of the King of the Jinn dominated the skyline. The palace was unlike anything else. It was a colossal structure that appeared to be woven from frozen moonlight and stardust. Its towers pierced the sky, surrounded by a subtle humming field of protective magic. Ahmed could see the king's royal banner, a black phoenix on a field of burning gold, snapping proudly in the magically controlled wind. Finding a secluded, elevated balcony on a nearby crystalline building, Ahmed settled down to observe, gathering his courage for the formal and likely fatal request he was about to make. He waited for many hours until the Jinn equivalent of sunset, when the magic lights of the palace intensified. It was then, in a private, enclosed garden built atop one of the palace's highest terraces, that Ahmed caught his first true glimpse of Peri-Banu. She was sitting alone by a fountain, which spouted not water, but shimmering liquid diamond. Her form was exactly as he had seen in the magic tube, but infinitely more brilliant and devastatingly beautiful. Her dress was woven from material that captured and released light, making her appear incandescent. But Ahmed noticed a deep, quiet sadness in her posture. She was a being of perfection, yet she carried the weight of profound loneliness. She was clearly a prisoner of her own magnificence and her father's fiercely protective nature. As Ahmed watched her, his determination solidified. He knew that the trials ahead were designed to kill him, but he also realized that winning her hand would not only bring him the woman of his dreams, but would also free Peri-Banu from her gilded cage. His quest was now one of mutual liberation. He spent the rest of the night planning his strategy, committing the palace's layout and the timing of the Jinn guards to memory. When the sun of the Jinn realm finally rose, Ahmed knew exactly what he had to do. Present himself to the king and initiate the deadly trials, trusting that his purity of heart and Homi's wisdom would carry him through. At the appointed time of the Jinn's midday, when the palace halls hummed with the greatest concentration of spirit power, Prince Ahmed made his move. Relying on the subtle protection of the Ring of Discretion, he followed a group of high-ranking Jinn nobles into the central audience chamber of the king's palace. The throne room was a dizzying spectacle. The floor was paved with solid amethyst, and the ceiling was a vast, shimmering dome that displayed the cosmos. Seated upon a throne carved from a single enormous ruby was the king of the Jinn, a figure of terrifying majesty. His skin shimmered with a golden light, and his eyes burned with an ancient, fierce intellect. Surrounding him were scores of powerful Jinn nobles and guards, their silence more intimidating than any noise. Ahmed used the precise Jinn court language he had learned from Homi, ensuring his voice was steady and his posture respectful. He stepped forward and removed the Ring of Discretion to signal his presence. Instantly, every eye in the massive hall fixed upon the single small mortal standing before the king. The king's golden skin deepened in color with immediate, consuming fury. His voice, when he spoke, was a rolling thunder that shook the crystalline pillars of the hall. What is this insolence? A fragile mote of mortal dust dares to interrupt the court of the spirits. Speak quickly, human, before I command my guard to reduce you to ash. Ahmed stood his ground. He repeated the formal greeting perfectly, then made his bold request. Mighty Lord King, I am Prince Ahmed, son of the Sultan of India. I have traveled across worlds, braving the impossible threshold, and have come to pay my utmost respects. I seek the hand of your daughter, the incomparable Princess Peri-Banu, to take her as my bride and queen. The court erupted in shocked, scornful laughter. The sound was like the scraping of 1,000 blades across ice. The Jinn nobles mocked the audacity of a mere mortal seeking a princess of the royal bloodline. The king merely smiled, a slow, predatory movement that held no warmth. A queen? You, a being who will crumble in less than 100 years, seek to bind the eternal blood of the Jinn? Many have come before you, Prince Ahmed. All have met a terrible end, as their arrogance deserved. But your audacity is remarkable. I shall not kill you instantly. Instead, I shall give you the chance to prove that you are worthy of even standing in my presence. He leaned forward, his massive golden figure dominating the room. Know this, mortal. Peri-Banu is destined for Prince Bahman, the mightiest among the Jinn princes. You are merely a distraction, and your death will be a lesson in humility for all your kind. If you accept the trials, you accept the certainty of your death. Ahmed bowed again. I accept the certainty, mighty king, for the prize is worth all the risks in all the worlds. The king of the Jinn, enjoying the spectacle, announced the first of the 3 impossible trials. Very well, then. Let the first trial begin. You claim to love my daughter's perfection, yet you have seen her but once. We shall see if your sight is as sharp as your ambition. The king waved his hand. Immediately, 12 beautiful jinn maidens, all of identical height and ethereal elegance, filed into the room. They were instantly masked by a powerful illusion, and every single one of them was magically made to look exactly, flawlessly like Princess Peri-Banu. Their hair, their robes, their subtle expressions, all were identical replicas of the princess. The king pointed at the line of 12 identical figures. Prince Ahmed, among these 12 maidens, 11 are powerful jinn capable of consuming your spirit whole. Only one is my daughter, Peri-Banu. You have until the sunset of this day to walk down the line and identify the true princess. One mistake, even the slightest error, and you shall be instantly transformed into a harmless insect to live out your remaining days in my scullery. Choose wisely. Ahmed felt a terrifying wave of confusion and magic wash over him. The illusion was absolute. There was no difference between the 12 figures. His human eyes were useless. The challenge was not one of sight, but one of recognizing a soul through a veil of absolute magical deception. His life and his chance with Peri-Banu rested on a guess, or perhaps on the deeper knowledge he had acquired. Prince Ahmed stood before the 12 identically beautiful figures, the immense silence of the jinn court pressing down on him. The king of the jinn watched, his golden eyes gleaming with anticipation, fully expecting a mortal to be annihilated within moments. Ahmed knew that his own human sight and intuition were hopelessly outmatched by the jinn's illusion. The deception was not merely visual. It was infused with deep magic designed to cloud a mortal's judgment. To guess would be certain death. He clenched his fist around the hidden iron charm, using its cool touch to anchor his mind against the wave of confusing magical energy. He remembered the lessons of Princess Homi. The jinn excel at mimicry, but they struggle to replicate the tiny imperfections and spontaneous movements inherent in mortal earthen life. Homi had told him to seek not what the jinn display, but what they conceal. Ahmed began his slow walk down the line of the 12 maidens. They stood absolutely still, their faces identical in their dazzling, serene perfection. He did not look at their faces, but at their feet, at their hands, and at the subtle space between them. He observed that the first 11 maidens were perfectly static, holding their breath and their stillness with a supernatural rigidity. Their eyes, though beautiful, were fixed, possessing the stillness of creatures composed of fire and air, not warm, circulating blood. They stood as perfect, lifeless statues of beauty. As he reached the 12th maiden, Ahmed detected a flicker, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement that broke the pattern of perfection. He noticed a minuscule tremor in her left hand, a spontaneous, human-like reflex. Furthermore, as he paused directly in front of her, he felt a sudden, faint pulse of warmth in the air, a tiny, nervous intake of breath, a very mortal sign of apprehension. The jinn were arrogant and would not fear a mere mortal, but Peri-Banu, the true princess, would surely feel fear for the fate of her devoted suitor. Ahmed realized the truth. The 11 jinn maidens were acting out the scene, but the real princess was bound by her human-like emotions and anxiety. Her physical stillness was perfect, but her heart betrayed her. The fear in her heart, though small, was the single mortal flaw in the king's absolute magical deception. With the court watching in breathless, astonished silence, Ahmed reached out his hand and gently placed it on the shoulder of the 12th maiden. "Mighty king," Ahmed announced, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. "I have no doubt. This maiden, the 12th, is your daughter, the true Princess Peri-Banu." A sound of deep, explosive rage erupted from the throne. It was the sound of magic failing, of power being defied by something simple and pure. The perfect illusion shattered instantly. The 11 Jinn maidens vanished, leaving behind only the single genuine princess. Peri-Banu stood alone, her real features now visible, more beautiful, more vibrant, and infinitely more expressive than the illusion. Her eyes, filled with deep surprise and respect, met Ahmed's gaze for the first time. She did not speak, but the subtle gratitude in her eyes was a reward greater than any crown. The king of the Jinn, his golden form pulsing with furious magical energy, was momentarily speechless. His most powerful, complex illusion had been defeated by a simple mortal observation. "Impossible!" roared the king, the very palace trembling around him. "This was a miracle, Prince Ahmed. Your luck is immense. But luck does not win the crown of the Jinn. You have passed the first trial by a whisper of chance. Now prepare for a trial that will break your body and your spirit." The king clapped his hands sharply, and instantly, the scene in the throne room dissolved, replaced by a dark, smoky vision. The atmosphere turned cold and heavy. "For your second trial," the king announced, his voice now dangerously soft, "I command you to prove your resourcefulness against a power greater than illusion. I command you to transport yourself to the desolate, windswept Isle of Perpetual Winter. You must remain there for 1 full day and night, without heat, food, or shelter, where the frost seeps into the very bones. If you survive the cold, you shall return by sunrise of the 3rd day. Fail to return, and you shall freeze into an eternal monument to mortal folly." Ahmed looked at the cold, smoky vision of the frozen island. He had survived the mountains, but a full day and night in perpetual winter without aid seemed truly impossible. He had no magic carpet for escape, and his iron charm could not warm his blood. This trial was designed for death by the elements. The king of the Jinn gave no time for farewells or preparation. With a booming command and a flash of intense golden light, Prince Ahmed was instantly snatched from the warm, crystalline palace and violently deposited onto the Isle of Perpetual Winter. The shock of the transportation was nothing compared to the shock of the cold. The air was a crystalline knife that immediately sliced into his lungs. The ground beneath his feet was a sheet of solid ancient ice, and a constant, fierce wind howled across the barren landscape. The sun was perpetually hidden behind thick, frozen clouds, casting the island in a permanent, dim twilight of blue and white. There was no shelter, no vegetation, and no sign of life, only endless grinding frost. Ahmed's mortal body reacted instantly. His blood felt like sludge, his limbs stiffened, and a terrifying numbness began creeping into his fingers and toes. He knew that the king of the Jinn had chosen a trial that exploited the single greatest weakness of human beings, their vulnerability to the absolute power of nature amplified by Jinn magic. He began to pace frantically, trying to generate warmth, but the effort was futile against the elemental fury. Despair threatened to consume him. He had no magical fire, no enchanted robes, and no instant exit. This was not a test of wit, but a sentence of slow, deliberate freezing. Clenching his fist, Ahmed remembered Princess Homi's gentle warning that the king's pride often led him to use powerful, visible magic, and that all power, even elemental control, requires a constant, focused expenditure of Jinn energy. The king was using cold magic to maintain the Isle of Perpetual Winter, and elemental magic could always be countered by its opposite. Ahmed searched the frozen ground and impossibly found a few shards of brittle petrified wood buried beneath the ice. It was useless for fire starting by mortal means, but he realized the solution must be spiritual, not physical. He withdrew the small, plain iron charm from beneath his garments. The iron, the bane of Jinn magic, felt impossibly warm against his freezing palm. He focused his entire will upon the charm, drawing upon the core of his human essence, the fiery determination that had carried him across deserts and up impossible mountains. He remembered Homi's words, "The jinn rule the elements, but the mortal mind rules determination." He sat down amidst the howling wind, pressing the iron against his chest, and began to concentrate. He visualized the warmth of his home, the fire in his father's hearth, and the radiant inner light of Peri-Banu. He poured his sheer mortal will into the small iron charm, using it as a conduit to project a counterforce against the king's spell. With impossible effort, Ahmed focused his internal, burning desire for survival, forcing the energy outward. He felt a fierce pain as his body fought the overwhelming cold, but he maintained his focus. Slowly, miraculously, the small pieces of petrified wood at his feet began to smolder. The heat was infinitesimal at first, but it grew. The focused, pure energy of mortal defiance, anchored by the magic-breaking iron, disrupted the jinn's local enchantment. The area immediately surrounding Ahmed began to warm, forcing back the elemental cold. The struggle lasted the entire long, terrifying night. Ahmed had to constantly feed his will into the fire, fighting the urge to sleep, which would mean instant freezing. He huddled over the small, defiant flame, which was just large enough to keep the relentless frost from consuming his core. The wind screamed its fury, and the ice around him groaned, as if the magical island itself resented his refusal to die. When the jinn's equivalent of dawn finally broke, Ahmed was exhausted, frostbitten, and trembling violently, but he was alive. He had survived the Isle of Perpetual Winter. Just as the first rays of the pale, distant sun touched the icy landscape, a surge of golden light erupted around him, and the Jinn King's magic snatched him violently away from the frozen wastes and returned him instantly to the throne room. He stood trembling before the King of the Jinn. The great ruler was stunned, his golden face clouded with disbelief. Ahmed was battered and half frozen, but he was undeniably whole. He had defeated the elemental fury and passed the second impossible trial. Prince Ahmed stood before the King of the Jinn, his body shaking from the lingering cold of the Isle of Perpetual Winter, yet his spirit was unbroken. He had defied the elemental power, and the great Jinn King's face was dark with unconcealed fury at the failure of his second deadly trial. "You are tenacious, mortal," the king hissed, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You survive where even the strongest men of the earth would have perished instantly. But your survival is merely an inconvenience. The third trial is designed not for the body or the eye, but for the very core of your being. If you fail this, your soul will be extinguished, and your memory will vanish from all the worlds." The king paused, gathering his immense magical power, and then announced the final, insurmountable challenge. "For the third and final trial, you must prove your worthiness to carry the bloodline of the Jinn. You must enter the chamber of ancient fire, the heart of my palace, where the elemental heat is so profound that it burns away all that is mortal and weak. You must survive 1 full hour in this chamber. If you emerge untouched, then you shall have my reluctant acceptance, and the hand of Peri-Banu will be yours." Ahmed looked toward the chamber entrance, a large archway that pulsed with blinding, liquid heat. The air shimmered violently near the opening, carrying the smell of pure, elemental flame. He knew this trial was a deliberate inversion of the last, a test of fire to counter the test of ice. His mortal body was already weakened by the cold. This final heat would surely consume him. The iron charm could protect his mind, but it could not protect his flesh from fire. Ahmed realized that this test, like the others, required not raw resistance, but knowledge of the jinn's fundamental nature. He searched his memory for every detail Princess Homi had shared about the spirit's relationship with fire. Homi had taught him that the jinn themselves are born of smokeless fire. Therefore, intense heat does not destroy them. It sustains them and energizes them. She had also warned that the jinn often maintain their magical power by drawing it from a specific source or focus, a heart power. Ahmed realized that the Chamber of Ancient Fire was not merely a furnace. It was likely a sacred place, perhaps the source of the king's own elemental power. The true challenge was not surviving the heat, but recognizing the nature of the chamber and demonstrating control over the fire, not merely resistance to it. He stepped forward, shivering only slightly. "I accept the third trial, mighty king. I shall enter the chamber of ancient fire, and by the grace of my determination, I shall emerge unscathed." The king merely laughed, a dry, terrifying sound. "Enter then, fool, and let the final flame claim your soul." Ahmed was led to the archway. As he approached the entrance, the heat was so intense it felt like a physical hammer striking his skin. He took a final deep breath, tightened his grip on the iron charm, and stepped through the shimmering heat into the chamber of ancient fire. The chamber was a vast, open space where the air was a constant, blinding white. The walls glowed, and rivers of molten gold flowed across the floor. In the exact center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single, massive crystallized ember, the source of the chamber's impossible elemental heat. Ahmed knew instantly that this was the heart of the jinn's power in the palace. To simply survive the heat was impossible. He had to demonstrate a mastery that would shock the king. He moved toward the center, chanting the jinn phrases of respect that Homi had taught him, treating the fire not as an enemy, but as a host. He walked slowly, despite the incredible heat attempting to boil the very moisture from his body. He reached the pedestal. With a sudden burst of pure will, amplified by the protective focus of the iron charm, he reached out his hand and placed it directly upon the crystallized ember. The moment his mortal flesh touched the spiritual fire, the entire chamber roared. The heat intensified beyond measure, and Ahmed felt a tremendous, agonizing surge of energy and pain. But he did not withdraw. He maintained the ancient jinn phrases, commanding the fire to recognize him as an equal, not as prey. He held the ember for a long, impossible minute, letting the raw elemental energy course through him, demonstrating not just resistance, but assimilation. Then, slowly, Ahmed removed his hand. The fire had left his skin completely untouched, and the crystallized ember had dimmed slightly, recognizing his claim. He had tamed the elemental fury. When the full hour was complete, Ahmed walked back through the archway, emerging into the throne room. He was covered in sweat, but otherwise unharmed. He stood perfectly steady before the horrified king of the jinn. He had survived the third trial. The silence that followed Prince Ahmed's emergence from the chamber of ancient fire was heavier than any command. The king of the jinn, ruler of the spirit realm, was defeated. He had thrown every weapon in his arsenal, illusion, ice, and fire, at the mortal prince, and every challenge had been overcome by pure devotion, intelligence, and the humble wisdom learned from Princess Homi. The king rose from his ruby throne, his golden form crackling with frustration. "Mortal," he roared, though the power in his voice was now laced with a bitter resentment. "By the ancient laws of the jinn, which even I cannot violate, you have satisfied the conditions. You are worthy of standing beside my daughter." He paused, his eyes narrowing to slits of furious gold. "However, my reluctant acceptance is not a gift. Peri-Banu is a princess of the jinn. She cannot travel through the world of men on the back of a mundane beast, nor can she be sustained by your common food. You have proven you can enter my realm, but you must now find a way to transport her safely back to your mortal kingdom, and her journey must befit her royal status. If you fail to meet this final, non-magical condition, she remains here, and you will be executed for wasting my time." Just as Ahmed began to formulate a response, Princess Peri-Banu stepped forward from the shadows, her ethereal beauty shimmering. It was the first time she had spoken in Ahmed's presence. "Father," she said, her voice like the chiming of distant silver bells, "the conditions are met. I accept Prince Ahmed. Furthermore, the means of transport are already provided. I carry with me the magic of true light, a power that can sustain me and shield us both from the grime of the mortal world." The king, defeated on all fronts, could only wave his hand in weary dismissal. "Be gone, then. Let the ceremony be concluded quickly." The formal marriage ceremony of the jinn was not one of grand spectacle, but of quiet, profound commitment. In a private chamber, attended only by Princess Homi, the jinn king, and a few high-ranking officials, Peri-Banu and Ahmed exchanged simple ancient vows. The bond was sealed not with mortal rings, but by a shared drop of sacred water from the fountain of liquid diamond, which bound their fates together for eternity. After the ceremony, Peri-Banu, now Ahmed's wife, spoke to him in hushed tones, her beautiful face serious. "My dearest Ahmed," she whispered, "you won my freedom, and you are in my heart. But the greatest danger is not behind us. It awaits us in your father's court. Your treacherous brother Houssain now possesses the magical tint and uses it as false proof of his worthiness. His lies, amplified by the terror of the jinn realm, will blind your father." Peri-Banu revealed that she had prepared for this moment. She opened her hand, and in her palm rested a small, circular mirror crafted from pure, polished obsidian. It looked simple, but it radiated an immense, steady power. "This is the mirror of undeniable truth," she explained. "It is a rare item of my mother's making. It possesses the power to instantly dispel any lie spoken in its presence and reveal the absolute, unvarnished truth of a situation. When you return to your father's court, hold this mirror before Houssain and command him to repeat his claims. His deception will crumble, and the truth of his theft and betrayal will be laid bare." Ahmed realized that this magical tool was the final, critical piece of his victory. He had the bride, the proof of the jinn realm, and now the weapon against treachery. With Homi's quiet blessing and guidance, Ahmed and Peri-Banu made their preparations for departure. Peri-Banu, using the magic of true light she possessed, created a shimmering, subtle shield around them both, ensuring their safe transit through the chaotic mortal world. Under the cover of the jinn night, the prince and the fairy princess quietly slipped out of the palace, headed back toward the secret gateway in the Black Gorge. They were leaving the realm of the jinn, ready to face the final political battle for the crown of India. Prince Ahmed and the fairy princess Peri-Banu slipped through the hidden gateway in the Black Gorge, leaving the glittering, complex intensity of the jinn realm behind them. The transition back to the mortal world was sudden and profound. The shimmering, powerful air of the spirits was replaced by the familiar, dusty scent of the earth. For Peri-Banu, the change was overwhelming. She had never truly experienced the mortal world. She recoiled slightly, her brow furrowed in concentration, but the magic of true light she carried provided a subtle, protective aura that shielded her from the grime and oppressive atmosphere. "The air here is heavy, Ahmed," she whispered, her voice reflecting surprise. "The colors are muted, and the scents are so thick and earthy. Your world is beautiful, but it holds a sadness I cannot name." Ahmed guided her gently down the difficult mountain path. As they descended, he recounted the full story of the competition since they parted. The betrayal of Houssain, the theft of the artifacts, Ali's long, honest return journey, and the political stalemate now gripping the court. He emphasized the Sultan's love and the extreme danger posed by Houssain's arrogance. "The magical tent sits in my father's treasury," Ahmed concluded. "Houssain has the item, but we possess the truth, and with your mirror of undeniable truth, we possess the means to reveal it." Their journey was long but swift, fueled by Ahmed's urgency and Peri-Banu's tireless spiritual energy. They traveled for several days, crossing the vast open plains that border the capital. One dusty afternoon, as the sun beat down relentlessly, Ahmed spotted a solitary figure ahead on the road, a man walking with the weary, determined gait of someone who had traveled hundreds of miles on foot. The figure was thin and exhausted, but the rigid set of his shoulders was unmistakable. "Peri-Banu, wait," Ahmed commanded softly. "That man, that is my brother, Prince Ali." Still making his slow, painful trek toward justice, stopped, stunned by the sight of his younger brother. His eyes widened in disbelief, then focused on the woman beside Ahmed. He had seen the vision of her in the magic tube, but the real Peri-Banu was infinitely more glorious, truly a being of impossible perfection. Ali stumbled toward them, tears welling in his eyes. "Ahmed, you are alive. You truly found her. She is beyond the vision." The two brothers embraced, Ahmed filled with relief at his brother's safety, and Ali filled with overwhelming gratitude and respect for Ahmed's perseverance. "My brother," Ahmed said, pulling back. "Houssain has seized control of the court, but we have a weapon. Ali, meet my wife, Princess Peri-Banu." Peri-Banu greeted Ali with regal kindness, extending her hand. "Your brother spoke of your honesty and courage, Prince Ali. We need your testimony." Ahmed quickly showed Ali the small, obsidian mirror of undeniable truth. He explained its function, how it would instantly and irrevocably expose Houssain's lies when he repeated his claims. "We must use this at the perfect moment," Ahmed stressed. "We must not give Houssain a chance to escape or hide. The Sultan is waiting for a resolution. Let us give it to him instantly." Ali, seeing the strength and truth beside his brother, felt his fatigue vanish, replaced by renewed focus. He handed the apple of life to Ahmed, its final purpose now served. "The apple is yours, Ahmed. It is fitting that the healing power of life should join the truth of the jinn. Let us go to Father now. I shall stand witness, and together we shall unmask the traitor and secure the crown for the one who truly earned it." The three allies, the devoted prince, the beautiful fairy princess, and the honest, weary brother, turned toward the capital. The long, desperate journey was over, and the final political confrontation for the throne was about to begin. The news that Prince Ahmed had returned, and was accompanied by a woman whose beauty defied the very sun, ripped through the capital like wildfire. The three allies did not wait. They rode directly to the royal palace gates and demanded immediate audience with the Sultan. The guards, stunned by the vision of Princess Peri-Banu, barely put up a resistance. The Sultan, relieved and utterly astonished, immediately commanded that the Grand Assembly Hall be prepared. Every noble, courtier, and minister was summoned. Prince Houssain, who had been anxiously consolidating his claims, was forced to attend, a heart pounding with a mixture of dread and furious denial. The moment the great doors of the assembly hall were flung open, all sounds ceased. Prince Ahmed entered first, his bearing regal and determined. Behind him walked Prince Ali, who, despite his ragged appearance, stood tall with a conviction of truth. And between them, illuminating the dusty hall, was Peri-Banu. The court was struck dumb. No one moved. No one spoke. The atmosphere, already tense from weeks of political uncertainty, now thickened with the sheer, overwhelming presence of the fairy princess. Her gown shimmered with threads of light, and her skin radiated a subtle luminescence. She was not merely beautiful, she was the living proof of the impossible, a creature of pure magic and grace who had stepped into the mortal world. The Sultan rose from his throne, tears of relief and joy streaming down his face. "My son, Ahmed, you are safe, and you have brought—" He could not finish the sentence, overwhelmed by the sight of the woman who was clearly the perfection he had demanded. Houssain, pale and trembling, immediately tried to regain control of the narrative. He forced a sneering laugh. "Father, do not be fooled. This woman is an illusion. A common sorceress he has purchased to distract you. Ahmed abandoned his quest and has returned with a mere trick." Peri-Banu looked at Houssain, and her gaze, though gentle, was like pure, cold starlight. Houssain visibly flinched under her scrutiny. The Sultan, however, was already convinced. He saw the love in Ahmed's eyes and the honesty in Peri-Banu's poise. But he still needed irrefutable proof to settle the dispute over the crown. Ahmed stepped forward, his eyes locked on his elder brother. He placed the apple of life and the exquisite, dark obsidian mirror of undeniable truth on a velvet cushion directly in front of the throne. "My lord and father," Ahmed proclaimed, his voice cutting through the silence, "I did not return with an illusion. I returned with my wife, the Princess Peri-Banu, the daughter of the King of the Jinn. I have successfully endured and conquered the 3 impossible trials set by her father." He pointed to the objects. "You have seen the power of the apple of life, which saved your life. Now, behold the mirror of undeniable truth. This magical artifact, a gift from the Jinn realm, instantly shatters any falsehood spoken in its presence." Ahmed fixed his gaze, heavy with scorn and disappointment, on Houssain. "Brother, your treachery ends today. You have claimed sole credit for finding the magical tint, accusing Eli of desertion and me of failure. Now I command you, look into this mirror of undeniable truth and repeat your claim that you alone are worthy of the crown and that you justly acquired the tint without fraud or malice." The tension in the hall became unbearable. Houssain stumbled backward. He tried to speak, but the fear of the mirror's magic paralyzed him. He knew that the moment he uttered the lie and its reflection, his true deceitful motives would be revealed to all, perhaps even destroying him physically. Prince Eli stepped up beside Ahmed. "Speak, Houssain. Tell the court how you used the magic carpet to sneak past Ahmed, stole the tent, and abandoned me to die on the dusty road. Look into the mirror and speak your truth." Houssain looked from the terrifying honesty of the mirror to the shimmering perfection of Peri-Banu, the ultimate prize he had failed to win. The truth of his greed and failure was too crushing to bear. He let out a strangled cry and collapsed onto the amethyst floor, unable to face the mirror's honesty. The silence of the court confirmed the truth. Prince Houssain was a proven, unrepentant traitor. The silence of the court was broken only by Prince Houssain's ragged breathing as he lay collapsed on the floor, his treachery exposed not by a voice, but by his own profound cowardice before the mirror of undeniable truth. The Sultan, his face heavy with sorrow and anger, delivered his immediate judgment. He needed no further proof. The fear in Houssain's eyes was more damning than any testimony. "Rise, Prince Houssain," the Sultan commanded, his voice cold and devoid of all affection. "You were entrusted with an honorable quest, yet you chose the path of deceit and cruelty. You betrayed your own brother, stole his means of transport, and abandoned him to a slow death, all for the sake of a crown you were not worthy to wear. Such profound malice cannot be forgiven. The Sultan then formally stripped Houssain of all his titles and privileges. For your treason and profound lack of virtue, you are hereby banished from this kingdom. You shall be exiled to the furthest eastern border. Take nothing with you but the clothes you wear. Your ambition brought you a handful of dust. Now live out your days with nothing else. Houssain was dragged away, his pleas for mercy silenced by the Sultan's unyielding decree. The court watched the disgraced eldest prince disappear, fully accepting the justice of his fate. The Sultan then turned to Prince Ali, whose long honest journey and suffering had earned him immense respect. "My son, Prince Ali," the Sultan said, his voice now warm with paternal pride. "You returned without the expected bride, yet you returned with the greatest virtues: courage, resilience, and unyielding honesty. You endured months of hardship rather than stoop to treachery. Though the crown is not yours, your reward shall be great. I grant you the vice-regency of the wealthiest province of this kingdom, where your wisdom and intellect may serve our people well." Prince Ali bowed deeply, accepting the judgment with profound grace. "My lord and father," he replied, "the greatest reward is the restoration of my honor and seeing justice served. I accept your generous appointment, and I joyfully acknowledge the true winner of this quest." Finally, the Sultan turned to Prince Ahmed and the radiant Peri-Banu. The Sultan descended from his throne, embraced his youngest son, and bowed respectfully to the fairy princess. "Prince Ahmed," the Sultan declared, his voice ringing with absolute finality, "you sought not gold or power, but the impossible perfection of a soul. You endured the physical treachery of your brother and the supernatural tyranny of the Jinn King. You chose compassion, the apple of life, over speed and sight, and you won the ultimate prize, Princess Peri-Banu. You have demonstrated that a truly worthy king must be driven by devotion and integrity." He raised his hand and proclaimed to the entire court, "I hereby name Prince Ahmed as my heir and successor, and I recognize the Princess Peri-Banu as the future queen of this kingdom." The court erupted in massive, joyous applause. The judgment was accepted by all. The long, confusing competition was finally and rightly settled. The Sultan then ordered the royal treasurer to bring forth the powerful talismans recovered from Houssain's possessions. The treasurer brought forth the magical tent of the jinn, the magic carpet of Houssain, and the magic tube of Ali. These powerful artifacts, the Sultan announced, handing them over to Ahmed, must now reside with the most virtuous among you. They were acquired through greed, but they shall now be wielded with wisdom. The magic carpet will aid in the defense of our kingdom. The magic tube will aid in governance and knowledge, and the magical tent will stand as a symbol of the wondrous new alliance you have forged with the realm of the jinn." Peri-Banu, now queen, smiled gently upon her husband, placing the mirror of undeniable truth alongside the other artifacts, symbolizing that all power must be rooted in honesty. The kingdom rejoiced, knowing that the new era would be one of compassion, magic, and truth. The story of the three princes had finally reached its triumphant conclusion. The reign of Prince Ahmed and Queen Peri-Banu marked the beginning of a golden age for the kingdom. Their rule was an extraordinary blend of mortal compassion and jinn wisdom, a harmony that brought stability and unparalleled prosperity to the land. Prince Ahmed, now the crown prince and soon-to-be sultan, ruled not through force, but through the integrity and devotion he had demonstrated on his quest. He maintained the traditional laws of his father, but integrated the subtle foresight and magical knowledge learned from Peri-Banu and Princess Homi. The kingdom prospered because its rulers could anticipate famine through magical foresight and solve disputes with an honesty enforced by the knowledge of truth. The powerful talismans, which had been the instruments of greed for the elder princes, now served as instruments of peace and governance. The magic carpet was used exclusively to transport aid and medical supplies, including the occasional use of the Apple of Life, to distant provinces struck by disaster, ensuring that relief arrived instantly. The magic tube was used by Prince Ali, the loyal vice-regent, to monitor the borders and the markets, ensuring fair trade and quick identification of threats or corruption. His wisdom, combined with the power of sight, made him the most effective governor the kingdom had ever known. The magical tent became the centerpiece of diplomatic functions, used to shelter thousands of foreign dignitaries. It stood as a magnificent, silent testament to the new king's power and his unparalleled connection to the mysterious realm of the jinn, ensuring peace through. Prince Ali proved to be an invaluable minister. He had learned the painful lesson that intellect without compassion is vulnerable to ambition, and he served his younger brother with unflinching loyalty, content with the honor and respect his true character had finally earned him. He often told the story of his betrayal and long walk home, not with bitterness, but as a lesson in the dangers of ambition. The old Sultan lived out his remaining years in perfect contentment. He watched his youngest son rule with grace, and his kingdom flourish under the protection of his fairy daughter-in-law. He often remarked that his initial competition, which he intended merely to test their spirit, had actually revealed the fundamental nature of their souls: Houssain's greed, Ali's honesty, and Ahmed's devotion. Princess Peri-Banu never sought to displace the mortal government. She used her spiritual influence gently, sharing jinn knowledge only when it served the welfare of the people. Her very presence ensured a strong, lasting peace with the realm of the jinn, as her father, the king, respected the bond she had forged and the impossible trials Ahmed had survived. As for Prince Houssain, his exile was complete and irreversible. He lived a life of stark, bitter isolation, haunted by the memory of the beautiful queen he had forfeited through his own malice, and by the sheer, undeniable reality of his younger brother's triumphant, honest rule. He had the opportunity to possess 3 of the world's greatest magical treasures, yet he lost everything because he valued material wealth and shortcut power over kindness and truth. The story of the 3 princes, their magical talismans, and the quest for the ultimate bride became a legend told throughout the kingdom for centuries. The ultimate moral was clear, shining brighter than any crystalline palace in the jinn realm. True happiness, lasting power, and a life truly worth living are not found in the acquisition of objects, be they a magic carpet, a magic tube, or a magical tent, but in the unwavering pursuit of purity of heart, integrity, and genuine, self-sacrificing love. Prince Ahmed, who sought only devotion and the healing of his father, gained the crown, the artifacts, and a queen whose beauty was matched only by her loyalty. His wisdom and humility secured an eternal legacy of peace. And so, my friends, ends the tale of Prince Ahmed and the 3 princes, where sincerity triumphed over greed and true love prevailed over deceit, earning the righteous prince the greatest prize, the throne of the kingdom and the beauty of the fairy princess Peri-Banu. This story has proven that true worth lies not in the power of magical possessions, but in the purity of the heart and the wisdom of the mind. We hope this enchanting journey into the realms of the jinn and the Sultan's court has delighted you. We thank you immensely for following this extended epic. But remember, the treasures of 1001 Nights are endless. Wait for us very soon with an entirely new story and more exciting and magical adventures as we discover more of Scheherazada's never-ending tales. Until we meet again, be well and safe. Goodbye.